Darion's Gifts by Nina Delamere. This is a 4-part audio drama. Episode 2, Earth Listener. For the second time that week, Darion came home from dragon training with a face like thunder. As he entered the cave, he kicked a loose stone and sent it ricocheting across the floor. Plonking himself by the fire, his flared nostrils were greeted by the smell of roasted hibiscus flower. Darion gave his aunt the look, which means, "Don't ask me how my day went." She understood immediately and handed him a goblet of birch sap in the hope that a soothing drink would ease his angry mood. If Darion had been expecting an argument, he must have felt disappointed. His aunt had already learned patience. She simply spoke about her day and made sure Darion was well fed. A hungry dragon is always a grumpy one, she chuckled to herself. Nestled by the warmth of the fire, Darion gave his aunt a sideways glance, checking to see if she was watching him. She was.
Auntie, why am I so different?
Different? What do you mean?
Your scales are the colours of the rainbow. Mine are grey and so very dull.
Darion, my scales are not really rainbow colours.
Of course they are. I can see them, shining brightly. You have the most colourful scales in all Lemuria. All the other dragons admire you for it.
They are bright, but they became brighter when I found joy in my life. The brightness you see is me radiating that happiness.
What brings you joy?
Seeing the sun rise, feeling the earth underneath my feet, and having your claws clasped in mine.
As ever, Darion found himself wanting to open up to his aunt and tell her the source of his displeasure.
This morning, the air dragons laughed at me for my dull scales. They said I can vanish into the landscape and no one would be able to see me.
It's true. Nobody would be able to see you.
I don't understand. How can you agree with them?
Let me finish, Darion. You are a water dragon. You can shapeshift and decide where you want to spend your time. It's incredible how seamlessly you blend into the environment. That is your skill and your gift.
But I don't care about blending in. I want colourful scales like you.
Your smooth scales were created to glide through the water. Without these subtle tones, you would not be able to merge in with the oceans or be able to ride the clouds without being seen by the humans.
But why don't I want to be seen? Am I really that ugly?
Darion, you are putting your thoughts into my words. Please listen to what is actually being said. You would frighten the humans because of your size, not because of how you look. If the Earthlings could see you, you would not be able to help them, which is your Lemurian life purpose. Humans are not ready to see you just yet. Your disguise means you can visit beautiful landscapes and not be noticed. It's like a cloak of invisibility. How fantastic is that?
But I want to shine brightly so that I can make friends easily.
When you make friends, it is not how you look on the outside, but rather what comes from within.
I don't understand.
We are all born looking different on the outside. We have different scales and come in ranges of shapes and sizes. But inside our bodies, we are the same. We share the same blood. It courses through our veins and our hearts. What makes us different is our thoughts and how we interact with the world around us. Do we grow from the challenges we face, or do we hide and let fear steal our dreams?
She continued with a faraway look in her eyes.
Our uniqueness makes us what we are. We dragons are both strong and weak. There are special types of dragons and they are often misunderstood. These dragons like being alone. They are free-spirited and think deeply. They have a connection to the universe that burns within their soul. Often they will fly and walk through the most painful lives, but they have the courage to smile and help others. Dragons like these are gifts from the universe.
Was my mother a gift from the universe?
Yes, your mother was a very special dragon. She was like the hummingbird who discerns which flowers to drink nectar from. She would help anyone, yet she chose her friends carefully. True friends are like the stars in the sky. They shine light in the darkest places, and although you can't always see them, a silver thread connects you. True friends know your flaws, but love you just the same.
I think differently from lots of dragons too.
And this is what truly makes you unique, your soul.
What's a soul?
Your soul is the essence of who you are. It is your emotions, your inspirations, your consciousness. When we align with dragons that match our vibration, they become true friends. Souls can recognize like-minded spirits, and these souls become our tribe.
Are the water dragons my tribe?
Not necessarily, Darion. Your tribe will be dragons that you can relate to. Dragons who share similar ideas and like similar things. Dragons who love you for who you are. Listen carefully to your soul's whispers.
Are your scales bright because your soul shines through?
Yes, and yours will shine brightly too when you learn to welcome love and not anger into your life.
Darion did hold anger in his heart. He just wasn't sure yet how to let go. He could feel his rage gnawing away at him. Sometimes it consumed him and took him to a place inside himself that scared him. A place he desperately wanted to escape from. Resting his chin on Idriana's shoulder, he asked her to tell him another ancestral story.
Come and warm yourself by the fire, and I will see what springs to mind.
Darion felt the softness of his aunt as he knelt down beside her. He could sense the gentle beating of her heart and feel the warmth from her body. He liked the comfortable feeling it gave him. It made him feel safe. Lawrence had wanted to visit Grandpa for a very long time, and at last the day had finally come. It was almost 2 years since he had last visited, but Lawrence could still remember Grandpa Lupus's small stone cottage, encircled by giant redwood trees. Trees so tall he thought they must surely be able to touch the starlit sky. "Have you packed everything you need?" Lawrence puffed as he struggled with the zip on his backpack. He told his mother that he had got everything, clipping his penknife and torch to a loop on the zip. Checking his pockets, he felt for his asthma pump and the lucky coin his father had given him. He grabbed Chinook's collar and slipped it gently over the excited dog's neck. As he thudded downstairs with Chinook close to his heels, Lawrence's mother looked at him with exasperation. "You're not taking Chinook with you. Your grandpa has far too many dogs to look after as it is." Lawrence thought about arguing with his mother, but knew it'd be futile. Feeling a pang of guilt, he reluctantly removed Chinook's collar. His fluffy friend wagged his tail frantically whilst looking at him with pleading eyes. "I know," thought Lawrence, reading Chinook's mind. Maybe staying with Grandpa Lupus wasn't going to be so much fun after all. Grandpa Lupus lived many miles away. Maybe this was why the visits were so infrequent. Lawrence knew that it was a struggle for his mother to find enough money for the petrol. She had been so full of anger over the last couple of years. Was she angry at him? Or was it because Dad had left them just before Christmas? Lawrence could sense how apprehensive his mother was about him spending time away from her. In fact, this would be his first time. Maybe this was why she looked so sad. After what seemed like hours, the car turned off the main road and onto a disused track. Towering trees huddled over the pathway, with huge branches that met in the middle as though shaking hands with each other. The light above dimmed as the harvest-coloured sun's rays cascaded behind the trees. It felt like a place time stood still. It was so tranquil. Trees seemed to whisper secrets from centuries past to each other. Lawrence felt the hairs on his neck stand up as the car rattled deeper into the woods. As the car came to an abrupt halt, excitement welled up inside Lawrence. He grasped the door handle, thrusting the door open. He stumbled out onto the bank of dew-covered moss. Grandpa Lupus stood before him. He was not quite as tall as Lawrence remembered, but other than that, he looked exactly the same. He still had a mass of grey hair and tortoise-shelled rimmed glasses that hung from the end of his wrinkled nose.
Aye, you've grown so much.
Lawrence smiled at his grandpa and gave him a hug, breathing in the familiar smell of beeswax furniture polish. Grandpa was an amazing carpenter. Lawrence fondly remembered the beautiful spinners he used to make for him. "Take your backpack then." Handing Lawrence his backpack, his mother enfolded him in another hug and whispered in his ear, "I have to go now, before it gets too dark. I shall pick you up in a few days. Make sure you are polite and helpful. Your grandfather needs looking after. You are staying in the most amazing place. Remember to listen to the silence. It's only in the silence you truly hear." She kissed him on the top of his head without looking back. His mother climbed into the car and drove away. Lawrence felt deserted. He knew Grandpa was a kind man, but he hadn't seen him for a couple of years, and he wondered if they would still have fun together. Inside the stone-wall cottage was an open fire. Large pine logs blazed with warmth. The smell of roasted chestnuts reminded Lawrence how empty his stomach felt. It seemed like hours since he had last eaten. Peering around, he noticed an assortment of leather-bound books crammed into a rather unusual bookcase. The red grain of the shelves gleamed with light from the flickering flames. It was almost as if the books were watching him. Imagine all those ideas and information. Why, Grandpa must know everything. Cobwebs of silver thread draped the books like silk scarves. Lawrence marvelled at the detail in the webs and in the delicateness of nature. How could something be so delicate, be so strong? Sometimes, pondered Lawrence, people can be like that too. Grandpa Lupus noticed Lawrence looking at the shelves in awe and told him the wood had come from an ancient yew tree just the other side of the lake.
Ah, you know, Lawrence, yew is a very special tree. It can live for many centuries. It's the tree of magic, from which all the most marvellous wands can be crafted.
Wands? That's incredible. Did you make these shelves too?
Grandpa thought for a while before he answered.
Aye, I did, lad, from a fallen yew tree. One stormy winter evening, when I was checking the sheep, the sky lit up with a violet haze. A bolt of lightning shot right through the middle of the yew tree like a ball of fire. The tree fell heavily onto ground.
Oh no!
Lawrence's blue eyes widened as he tried to imagine the scene.
You saw it happen?
Grandpa cleared his throat.
I were looking for my naughty sheepdog, Sirocco. As I approached the yew, lightning struck the tree.
What did you do?
The yew seemed to fall in slow motion, but I still couldn't move fast enough. Down it came, just caught my leg as I turned to run away. I were trapped. The wind were driving icy droplets of rain into my face, and they stung. I was so shocked, closed my eyes. I'd given up hope.
But you're still here, Grandpa. What happened?
I'm not sure. I passed out, and when I woke up, it must have been several hours later, the sun was just poking over the treetops. I could feel the warmth on my cheeks. The forest seemed alive with rustling noises and the magnificent cry of buzzards flying overhead, and wonderful sound of wolves howling. The tree was beside me, but my leg was no longer trapped. Perhaps the rain had turned the ground muddy, and in my sleep my leg must have slipped free. I looked up at the sky and was so very thankful. I remember being told as a child that after a storm the sun always comes out. How true is that?
Grandpa, you were very lucky.
Aye, I know. Alas, my leg was never the same after the accident. It slowed me down for sure, but I never let that stop me doing anything. I couldn't let that splendid tree go to waste, nor my adventure be forgotten. I made bookshelves and a walking stick out of the yew. I have all the time in the world to read now. Sometimes I think things happen to slow us down, so we can go within and find parts of us that are lost.
Lawrence loved Grandpa's stories and wanted to listen to more. But day had turned to night. It was time for bed. He yawned and rubbed his eyes.
Good night, Grandpa.
Grandpa ruffled Lawrence's blonde hair.
Good night, lad.
In bed, Lawrence gazed at the stars and the moon shining brightly through the bedroom window. The bird song had ceased, apart from an owl hooting in the woods and the occasional fox barking. Within minutes, he was peacefully asleep. In the early hours of the morning, Lawrence woke suddenly from a deep sleep. In the coolness of the night air, he could hear howling echoing around his room. A strange feeling spread from the top of his head. It was like a shiver. He could feel the presence of something in his room. Lawrence pulled the old, moth-eaten army blanket around himself tighter. I'm just having a bad dream, he told himself. The clouds are frolicking in the moonlit sky, forming shadows above my bed, he thought as he dozed back to sleep. Feeling warmth on his face, Lawrence became aware of the early morning sun peering through the window, filling the room with autumn colours. The birds shook their glorious feathers and burst into a chorus of song. He clambered out of the bed and ambled into the kitchen, where the smell of cooked breakfast greeted him. The warmth in Grandpa Lupus's smile made Lawrence feel at home.
Did you sleep well, young man?
I think so.
Lawrence pulled a chair out and sat down.
Although I did hear some strange noises.
What sort of strange noises?
Lawrence speared a mushroom with his fork and looked up.
Well, I think your dogs must have been outside howling at the moon.
Zephyr and Sirocco were in my room last night. They weren't howling, they were snoring.
But Grandpa, I definitely heard howling.
Perhaps you've inherited the special gift.
Gift? What gift?
The gift of Canis lupus.
I don't understand. What is Canis lupus?
Canis lupus are wolves. These ancient forests were once alive with wolves. They roamed freely in peace with our ancestors, who only used the resources that they needed. There were no locks on doors. If something were needed, it were given. This could be a warm fur skin, a smile, or simply someone to sit with.
Grandpa leant towards Lawrence and looked at him solemnly.
It is said that only a person who is truly in harmony with nature will feel the spirit of the wolves.
Why wolves only hear a spirit if we lived in peace with them?
Once our ancestors belonged to the sacred circle of nature. All lives held equal value. Sadly, times have changed. People used land for other things. They stepped out of circle, no longer wanting to share with each other. More and more were taken from the land, but not replaced. Things that once held value were put aside. Our ancestors turned their back on the natural laws. Wolves are one of many animals that have disappeared over the last few centuries.
But why did I hear the wolves?
Perhaps they're trying to tell you something. Perhaps they want you to learn about the way to be. Our ancestors lived and hunted with them in this forest. Maybe the wolves wanted you to experience what it will like to hear their amazing howl.
Have you got this special gift, Grandpa?
After my accident, I often thought I heard wolves. It's a call I remember all my life, but I've never seen them. Your beautiful grandmother was clear-sighted. She often saw them. Oh, how I'd have loved that gift. But we're all different. We all have different gifts.
Breakfast was finished in thoughtful silence. Abruptly, Lawrence stood up.
Grandpa, it's such a beautiful day. Can we try and find the wolves?
Young man, my legs are old, my eyesight's weak. You'll only find the wolves if they want to be found. They're shy spirits. There is, however, nothing to stop you looking. Make sure you stick to paths. I don't want to come looking for you at tea time.
You don't need to worry about me, Grandpa. My lungs are so bad I won't get far.
Lawrence, be mindful of your thoughts. Thoughts are very powerful.
I don't understand. What do you mean?
If you tell yourself something enough times, you'll believe it. Whether that something is good or bad, always be conscious of your thoughts and make sure you use them in a positive way. Your body hears you.
Lawrence wasn't sure what Grandpa meant, but felt a surge of excitement as he waved goodbye. He ambled happily along the gravel path. The further away from the stone cottage he walked, the darker the forest grew. The sun was blocked by overhanging fingers of trees, and the path crumbled away until it was no more. He emptied his trouser pocket. There must be something in here that will help me decide. He found an empty chocolate wrapper, a piece of string, an old conker, and his lucky coin. Clasping the coin tightly in his hand, tails I go on, and heads I'll turn back. As he tossed the coin, he could feel the anticipation welling up inside of him. The coin landed softly on the carpet of bright green moss.
Tails, I shall follow the direction of the sun.
He walked for almost a mile before stopping to listen to the breeze. It reminded him of what his mother had said to him. Only in the silence do you truly hear. He was now beginning to understand not only what she meant, but also what Grandpa meant by the power of thought. Lawrence's fascination grew as a line of wood ants marched across a rotting log, carrying small leaves and twigs. He marvelled at the cooperation between the ants and speculated on whether they had ever fought with one another. He was desperate to hear the sounds of the wolves again. Suddenly, a fox shot past him, then a young stag. Lawrence frowned. How odd! Next came some squirrels, followed by a tawny owl whizzing by. Fear paralysed him as he realised he could smell burning. Once again, his mum's words came back to guide him. When you feel frightened, it is important to face your fear. Stand up tall, look it straight in the eye. Fear is contained in the mind. Acknowledge and thank the fear for what it has taught you. Then send it on its way. Fear is the thief of all dreams. With those words and thoughts, he started to run in the same direction as the animals. He didn't want to face a fire. He wasn't strong enough. The moment he had spent standing still could cost him dearly. The fire was gaining on him quickly. The smoke and fear was affecting his asthma. Without warning, he stumbled on a rock. His chest felt heavy with the effort of breathing. Through his tears, he noticed the ants instinctively change direction, moving away from the fire. Lawrence sobbed. One of his legs was bleeding heavily. He watched the blood trickle down, staining his sock. He was in too much pain to move.
Help! Please, please help me.
The fire spread towards him. The pine needles on the forest floor were tinder dry, perfect for feeding the flames. The crackle and roar was deafening and filled Lawrence with terror. In his mind, he could hear Grandpa Lupus saying,
Lawrence, be mindful of your thoughts. Thoughts are very powerful.
Desperately, Lawrence closed his eyes and imagined it was raining, and the rain was extinguishing the fire. It's working, he thought excitedly, then realised it was just his own tears still flowing. He told his mind to concentrate. Slowing his breathing down, he imagined his grandpa coming to find him. Lawrence felt the presence of something large by his side. The hairs on his arms stood on end. Through his tears, he saw the most wondrous sight he had ever seen. A pack of 7 wolves with glorious fur stood before him. Their eyes reflected the approaching fire and shone like amber in the surrounding darkness. He shivered as he noticed their glistening white teeth. Intuition told him that they were not here to harm him. The largest wolf spoke.
Don't feel afraid. I am Nanook. We heard your cries and have come to help you escape the burning forest.
Nanook gently placed his mouth around Lawrence's grubby jumper and swung him onto his back. Lawrence felt his hands sink into the soft, thick fur of Nanook. The wolves sped through the blazing forest like the wind, as flames danced by their feet. Soon the fire receded and the black pungent smoke vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Lawrence breathed more easily. The remaining journey was smooth. The wolves' paws seemed to hover and glide over the evergreen floor. He wondered if he might be dreaming. Instinct told him he wasn't. The wolves slowed to a halt. Nanook set Lawrence down on the cold, stony ground. This was such a contrast after the comforting silver fur Lawrence had been grasping.
Where am I?
You are by our den, safe away from the fire.
Becoming aware of the pain in his leg, Lawrence looked down. His leg was caked in dry blood and mud. A smaller wolf approached him and began to lick it tenderly.
What are you doing?
Lawrence laughed as the wolf's ticklish tongue gently reached out over his leg. Keep still. I can help your leg heal by licking it. With tears in his eyes, Lawrence whispered to Nanook.
Is my grandpa safe?
Nanook lifted his heavy matted paw and placed it on Lawrence's shoulder.
Do not worry. The wind did not blow the fire in your grandpa's direction. He is on his way to find you with the help of others.
How do you know?
I know your grandpa's scent. I met him long ago. We are omnipresent and have vision beyond that of our eyes. Our ears can hear the voices of other worlds. We know the scent and smell of every creature that has ever passed through this land, from the beginning of time to this very day.
Thinking about all the animals who had not been as lucky as he had, Lawrence asked how the fire had started.
Sometimes fires are started by natural events like lightning. These can be beneficial to the plants and animals. When the fire is gone, new life will begin to appear. The old, burnt trees will decay in the soil, giving a helping hand to young trees. The circle of life continues. This fire was started by a campfire that had not been put out properly. Many of our animal friends have lost their homes and will go hungry through this carelessness.
Lawrence put his arms around Nanook's neck.
Have you lost your home?
We lost our home centuries ago. Now we wander through the forests of the world, watching over future generations of wolves. I suppose you could say that we are the guardians of the forest.
The other night, was it your pack who howled and came into my room?
Yes, you are a child of nature. We wanted you to experience the call of wild wolves. We must leave you now, for your grandpa is nearby.
Nanook licked some of the mud and tear stains from Lawrence's face.
Thank you for saving my life. Will I ever see you again?
Perhaps. Members of our family are always with you.
How?
You have a four-legged friend named Nanook, do you not? He and every dog in the world is part of our family. You will never be alone. Goodbye, my friend. Remember all that you have experienced today.
Nanook turned and led the pack away. As the wolves vanished, Lawrence felt part of him disappear with them. Lawrence could hear a car approaching, a Land Rover parked by the rocks. The doors opened and Lawrence could just make out the figure of Grandpa with his walking stick, accompanied by two strangers. Lawrence waved frantically with his arms.
Is that you, Lawrence?
Yes, I'm okay, but I have hurt my leg.
Lawrence could see people clambering up over the rocks with a stretcher. After a few minutes, a forest ranger knelt next to him.
Hello, Lawrence. My name is Ben. Your grandpa was sure that you would be out this far. He encouraged us to search for you here. It's remarkable that you have managed to run such a distance, especially with an injured leg.
Nanook and his family rescued me.
Nanook? That's an unusual name. Who is Nanook and where is he now?
Lawrence glanced up at his grandpa, who had a knowing twinkle in his eye. The forest ranger removed his hat and scratched his head.
He is a magnificent wolf. He carried me on his back. Nanook and his family travelled through the forests of the world keeping watch. Grandpa, they knew you were coming.
Ben said nothing for a few seconds, then raised an eyebrow.
Your grandson, Mr. Lupus, seems to be suffering from shock. Not uncommon after a traumatic event like this. May I suggest you get him checked over by a doctor as soon as possible?
Later that evening, humming happily, Grandpa roasted chestnuts over an open fire. Lawrence eyed him sleepily.
Grandpa, how did you know where I was?
With a sideways glance, Grandpa smiled and looked up at a beautiful oil painting of a huge silver wolf and his family sitting on an enormous pile of rocks.
Your grandma knew how much I wanted to see a wolf, so she painted what she saw in her mind, a group of 7 wolves on the rocks. That way I could enjoy seeing the wolves too. When the fire came, my attention kept getting drawn to your grandma's painting. I had this inexplicable feeling that you were safe on those rocks.
Grandpa, why didn't the ranger believe me?
Many people need to see to believe. Your grandma would always say that you needed to believe to see. The wolves are invisible to most people. You've been blessed. Only a true child of nature inherits the gift of Canis lupus.
Well, it's easy to work out the gift in this story.
What do you think the gift was?
Being in nature, of course. What do you think it was?
I think the gift was Lawrence meeting his grandfather after such a long while. Maybe now Lawrence understands the power of his own thoughts.